my studio space on the Falcor 2 right now. I'm going to be doing a live stream of what I'm working on and show some stuff that I've been creating and show some art tutorials. So I'll probably introduce myself a few times throughout this, but my name is Pelto. I am the artist at sea aboard the Falcor 2, and folks joining maybe have been seeing some of the dives that have been going on in the ship, and so for this live stream we're going to show me painting instead and show some of the projects I've been working on, which I've talked about during some of the dives if anyone has been joining for those. And so right now I'm working on a big watercolor painting about basically kind of the overarching region we've been in. And so we are in southern Chile, in kind of the northern Patagonia region, and I'm painting the town of Chaiten that we have been offshore of for a lot of our trips, and I'm also painting the volcano, Chaiten volcano, which is only about 10 kilometers from that town, and that's why we're a big part of why we're here doing the research is to study that the 2008 eruption of Chaiten volcano, which greatly affected the town and the area, but for our interest is how it affected offshore sediment deposits and kind of restructured that transition from onshore to offshore, affected marine life, affected kind of this whole delta system in front of the town. And so that is kind of what I'm showing in this painting, is I'm showing the town, the surrounding mountains and the Chaiten volcano. I'm showing the delta system, that part of which completely formed during this eruption. And so there's all of these, all of the material formed during the eruption, like the ash that like fell kind of into the river systems near the volcano, and those river systems go through or right next to the town of Chaiten. And so basically all this material that suddenly came down the river created this new big delta that is now somewhat isolating the town from their coastline that used to be able to just be right at the edge of town. So I'm showing that in this painting, and right now I'm working on adding some contrast to the painting, because it's kind of tonally in the front of the painting where I have the big brown delta is kind of to my eye looking kind of flat, and so I'm trying to add some like brightness to it, which is a little bit hard with watercolor to go back in. At home I might use some acrylic to help me with this, but I don't have that. So I'm just trying to brighten it so it's not such a flat looking kind of landscape, because the delta is really beautiful. And so that's what I'm going to work on first. I'm also going to work on some kind of reflections of light on the top of the water, because I have the ocean here. And some of the features I'm showing in that region are underneath the ocean. I have the sub-bottom profile, as it's called, for the delta system, and the new delta that was created. And so there would have been this, profile would have been somewhat here, but it would have really changed after the eruption. And so I'm going to highlight it more clearly than I have it now, but I basically have, by sub-bottom profile, I just mean like the layers of sediment in the seafloor here, and the structures, like if there's ridges or things like that. And so you can see the slope of the delta down into the ocean. And so that's one feature I have. And so that is data collected by our team here, is that sub-bottom profile. And then I will also be including the some data from one of the researchers in the science team on board, Javier, and he has studied this region for a long time, including for his PhD research. And so he has some great figures from that research, which is he continues to update, basically like showing where the shoreline was in this region in the past and how that's changed. And so I'm going to use basically like just a line, like colored line showing here's the shoreline now, here's where it was where it was located before the eruption. And so I haven't added that yet because I'm waiting until I'm happy with the way the delta looks before I add it, so I don't have to kind of paint over it. But yeah, that is what I will include for science data in this piece. And then I'm also including some cultural aspects in this piece, which is something pretty new for me to incorporate in my art, but I'm feeling really inspired by that potential idea of like having, like I usually have a lot of emotion and beauty and not just the science, but I haven't had a lot of cultural aspects, and I think a lot of that has come down to kind of not knowing how to include them, being uncertain if that was like appropriate to do so. But we've had the really unique opportunity of having, first off, like a lot of Chileans as part of the research team, part of the crew on board, part of the science communication team, and in particular a teacher who's local to the Chi-10 region, who's really been teaching us more specifically about the Mapuche culture that this specific region we're in has. And so I'm putting in some of the kind of spiritual figures, of which there are many, and so I just had to choose, in talking with her, some of those figures that are an important part of the story of the land here and of how it's changed with the eruption. And so I have a figure called Pincoya, spelled Pincoya, and so she is, as you know, has many meanings and things that she represents, but one thing that the teacher Danny told us about is that when she's facing out to sea, that means it's going to be a good year for fishing, so that's how I've represented her in like that positive aspect. She's a protector and has a lot of wisdom, and so she's also someone who helps people out in situations, and including if something bad were to happen, like because it's a coastal region, if something were to happen like a shipwreck, she would help you, and if you had passed away, she would help you to I forget what it is called, but basically a ship that would carry you away, and so it's kind of like seen as like a positive thing. And I also have a figure in the volcano, the Chi-10 volcano, as I'm showing it erupting because I really want to make it clear that story. And so that figure is called Pillan, Pillan, and he, I believe that Pillan is more like, there is not like one entity in the way that Pincoya is. I think that perhaps it's more like there's many of different ones. I'm not 100% sure about those origins, but this one in particular that I'm showing is within the smoke of the volcano, and so here he's being really destructive, but I know from Danny that while sometimes these spirits can be painted as scary or destructive or things like that, overall they're all meant to be protectors, or many of them are. And so the destruction that happened with the volcano would maybe be seen as like a sign of like a warning, or maybe like a warning to the people of like maybe they're not living in the right way. This is how Danny put it, not me. Maybe not living in the right way, and so they're kind of being sent a message. But overall, he would be a protector of the people. And so the other the one other cultural aspect that I may include is a symbol called the Cruz Symmetrica. There's a lot of beautiful geometric symbols that basically are kind of ways to represent kind of concepts, or like kind of represent concepts and beliefs and things like that, like a symbol to represent something spiritual or cultural. And so the Cruz Symmetrica has to do with kind of the connection of the sea and the land and the sky, and so kind of like Mother Earth type of symbol. And so I'm going to include that as like a border to the piece, because it kind of represents the spiritual figures that I already have in it. So those are the cultural aspects that I've included so far, and I think that probably will be all I'll include for this piece, but like I said, it's inspired me to think about that for other stories. Like I create a lot of paintings about where I am based in the United States, in Washington State, and there are many First Nation tribes in that area, and some that I have worked with or collaborated with in different ways in terms of like the glacier fieldwork that I do there, and those tribes have obviously a lot of really long connections to the land there, especially near where I live is the Nooksack tribe, and they're very connected to the Nooksack River system and the salmon. And so while I've done salmon pieces in the past, I haven't done something about the tribe, and so that's something that, though, I would need to have. It's not something I can just make. I think it's something I would need to have discussions about doing it in the right way, getting permission. So I think it's something that I'm excited to pursue, but it's ultimately, I feel, not just up to me to include that. It has to be the right thing to do. So I'm going to work on this piece a little bit more, and then I am going to show some different watercolor techniques. I'm still brightening the front of the delta, and a lot of times for me with painting, I'll work on something for a while and then I'll kind of pause and take a look, kind of like step back from it and take a look at it, because sometimes if you just kind of keep going and going, you can go too far, you can overwork something, add too much of a color, that kind of stuff. And so a lot of times it's good to for me to work on an area and then kind of like pause on it, look at it, and kind of go back to it later with fresh eyes and see if I think it needs more. And so part of the reason why I'm brightening the delta is because I think I did that earlier in this process. I think I kept working on getting the colors right, and it kept getting darker. And so now I have to go back in and brighten it, which is a little bit harder to do. But that's part of the process a lot of times in making art, is getting stuck and figuring out how to move forward. So there's a lot of different ways that I'll do that, like one, just taking a break like I was talking about. Also really utilizing things that I learned in my art classes in school, and so, or just with the art community in general. And so I will send photos of something that I'm stuck on to other artists and get their feedback and critique, which I really value. I really value doing that, and a lot of times they're going to see things in a different way than me, and be looking at it from a perspective of, the person who's not creating it and working on it. And so it's really helpful. And the space that I'm in right now that I've set up is in the main lab on board the ship. And so basically this is where the majority of the sediment sampling is happening. And so when they're collecting cores from the seafloor of sediment, and so it can go back in time, collecting a core deep below just a few meters actually below the surface, and then they have to sample them and describe them. And so describe, like, is it sand, is it clay, is there glacial material, is there volcanic material, things like that. And then they're sampling that to do more with back at the labs of their universities and workplaces. And so they'll find out things, like they'll be able to date things, they'll be able to figure out if it's volcanic material, what, how old is it, what eruption is it from, and things like that. So they prep everything here basically, and then they can do more with it after they leave the ship. And so I'm getting to work in that space has been really neat, because I'm around a lot of what's going on. I've been able to learn a lot about it that way, kind of just listen into a lot of the process. And I've been able to help with the science quite a bit, which has been fun to learn some new, learn some new types of sampling and things like that. And a lot of the time it's just like observing is also really fun, and getting to learn about a field that's different than something I've experienced before. And also I think that, like, for me as the artist on board, it's really important not to also like have those moments where I'm just like observing and listening, because if you're you kind of have to be really present and thinking about what to show, rather than just going and creating art right away, I think, and also like taking breaks to be present and to learn, because otherwise not really like picking up on some of the stories and being as engaged in the science going on, in my opinion. So I'm trying to not always be creating, also be participating in what else is going on board the ship, which is, I feel fortunate to be able to do, and to have people that will teach me and others. Okay. So I think I'm gonna pause on the delta for a minute and give it a second to see what I think, so I don't overdo it. And I'm going to show some techniques. I might have to turn off this white light at some point, because I feel like
I was going to say,
it's starting to make me dizzy.
Yeah. Feel free.
So the white light was nice, but it's flickering, so it's going to be more yellow. However, so normally at home my lighting, I use like a very white light, but it's smaller, and so your eyes just have to get used to the warmer. I'm sure it looks pretty yellow and warm for you guys, and so usually I work in like a bright white light, but it's totally fine to not. Okay, so
before you show techniques, could you answer a viewer question?
Yeah.
Juliana asks, were you familiar with the area, culture, and history prior to this cruise, and how did you get involved with the team?
Great questions. So I started learning, I started learning a little bit ahead of doing the cruise, but I wouldn't say I really learned about the culture ahead of time very much. And so basically kind of like read through materials that were sent to me, including like some science papers and some like general overviews about the project. And so in doing that, there was discussion of about the people, like especially just the town of Chai-Ten, and there was some discussion of their culture, but not like specifics, like I knew nothing about their spiritual beliefs or anything like that. And so what I more learned about was kind of like how important the land is to them and this place, because they didn't want to move after the eruption, even though there's the potential for future ones. For them, it's more important to stay in their home, stay with their roots. And so learning about it has primarily come from folks on board, which has been really incredible, that they've been so open to sharing that, especially in talking with the local teacher, Danny, because unfortunately I don't speak hardly any Spanish, and her English is better than my Spanish, but she doesn't have very much of English, and so we've been having some long conversations on
like a translating app on our phones, where we'll kind of like say paragraphs back and forth, and that's kind of how I learned from her. Yeah, and I've been getting some feedback from her as I've been making the art too. And then for getting this opportunity, the artist, it's called Artist at Sea Institute, and so you can apply. It's an artist residency that you can apply to be a part of. And so I was actually originally contacted by an employee at Schmidt Ocean Institute because she'd come across my work and thought it'd be a good fit, which is awesome because usually with things like art residencies, you apply and often don't get them. They're very competitive, and so to be pursued was obviously a compliment. And she was asking if I was available for a cruise that was about to happen. And so I couldn't do that because I already had another work trip. But then my name was kind of out there with that group. And so once another opportunity came along, like later this year, this opportunity, I applied for that. And I think I had a leg up because they were interested in my work, and especially because this group is doing coring. I've made paintings about that before, and so I kind of have some work that aligns well with the research, and so I know they try to purposefully pair artists and their work and style with the research going on, like which is great. So that's how I got that opportunity.
Cool.
Okay, so I will show a few techniques in my little watercolor book. So I'm first going to show kind of
transition to the iPhone now, just so we
Yeah.
can see better.
Great. I'm going to share a little bit about like creating some blooms with watercolor, because you can get some really nice effects and like some cool organic shapes by doing watercolor blooms. If anyone knows what that is, if not, you'll see what I mean by that. And I'll also show some color mixing, because I feel like there's a few simple things that I just use a lot to kind of, if you want to get like earth tones or go outside and like, match the color of the trees or the water or something like that. If that's your goal with art, then there's some good techniques for mixing colors. And I can also show a few like specific types of things to paint, like kind of painting trees well or mountains or things like that. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, okay. So I'll first show painting blooms, and there's like different styles for doing that, but I'm just going to show painting a color first and then getting blooms based on that. So I'm going to do like a blue. So I'm going to mix some blue paint. And I use blooms a lot for kind of just creating some like kind of organic shapes and dimensions to my piece. I use it a lot for water. I think it's really good for sky too, and clouds. And you kind of learn to control it like a little bit. Obviously you're choosing where to place a bloom, but a lot of it is also a little bit out of your control, which can turn out really cool. Sometimes I don't like how it turns out and I kind of cover it again. But I'm just painting a rectangle right now, and then I'll show you guys the bloom. And the paint should be like a little bit damp still, but it shouldn't be like right immediately when you paint it. It won't work quite as well. So you want it to be like, you have to do it obviously before the paint dries to get the effect, but not when it's like soaking wet. Like it should just be like a little bit damp. And also some like colors I feel like work better than others with it. So if like all you do to create blooms is drop like water onto the damp paint, and so that could have some color with it. Like you can do a bloom with color, but it can also just have water, which is often what I do, because it's, yeah. So I'm going to try one. Yeah, so it's working. And a lot of times it'll dry different than you expect. But yeah, you can just see I'm like literally just kind of tapping my brush, and all the brush has is water. It's not going to push away all the pigment, so you'll still have like the blue underneath. And you could do something, like a lot of times I do kind of like just a dot, but you can do like more of a line with it. But yeah, it can be a fun effect for a lot of different things, like something abstract or something like within a landscape. So it's something that I use a lot because it's something that mainly watercolor can just do. Yeah, so I use that a ton in my work, and if anyone wants to see that again, you can let me know. Another thing to kind of do something similar is I'm going to first just paint literally some water, and then you'll see the effect in a second because it probably won't show up very well, but I'm just painting some water. It has a little bit of blue in it because my water isn't clean, but and then if I take like the blue paint, and you'll see it kind of like and keep it separate for a minute, and then kind of blend it in. It'll also kind of create a cool like organic look effect. And so that's something else I might do for like sky or water, things like that. I feel like that's where I use effects like this a lot. Okay, so now I'm gonna put the two together, and you'll see how it like cascades down in a cool way. So yeah, this can be cool for like underneath a cloud is kind of like what I see with that. And you can always like tilt your page or something to make it more dramatic, but and then if I put some, I'm gonna put some little like blooms of blue down here so you can see doing putting pigment on water instead, which I also do use sometimes. Like if I have a light color that's damp and I put like a color on top. So yeah, I do stuff like that for clouds and skies. Okay, so some of the main things that I do with color mixing is just around like using complementary colors, and so that just means like opposite on the color wheel, like green and red are opposite, blue and orange are opposite, and yellow and purple are opposite. And so it just means like if you mix green and red, you can get like a nice kind of brown color. Basically, it's a way to like make it less saturated and get more earth tone colors. So I'll show you that with green and red to start. I feel like that's one of the most common ones that I use. So this is just the red by itself. And then I'm going to mix a little. My palette is kind of full, so I'm kind of putting it somewhere. Okay. So yeah, that was the red by itself, and then I'm going to put a little bit of green into it. It's like kind of like a medium green color. Or I guess I'll show you a little swatch of what the green looks like. And my brush isn't completely clean right now, but that's honestly kind of how I work. I'm not always, yeah. Okay, so that's basically like the green that I'm mixing with it. And just putting a tiny bit of the green in, it's already kind of making this kind of like reddish brown color, which I feel like could be good for a lot of, like it kind of reminds me of like some colors from like the, like cool, when there's like cool multicolored rocks and like kind of desert like landscapes, kind of like a rusty color. And then same if I add more green into that, like this is a technique I would use a lot to mix colors of like trees or plants, and so it's not too bright green. And so I just added to that same area, I added some red in, and now you can see it's like really an olive green. And the green that I used already was a little bit olive, so you could have like a more like subdued forest green that is like a bluer tone. So yeah, if I add some green like that, for example, and there's still like enough red in there. So that's how I mix. Red and green is basically how I mix, like I said, like different trees and plants or grass or things like that. And so I just kind of play around with the amount of, like if it's something like trees, then it's mainly green with just like a little bit of red, for example. And then if I feel like it's too olive, like these are a bit olive for trees, then I would mix in a more blue-green, or I'd mix in just some blue, whatever I wanted. And so I'll try that to get that color, have like a darker green that is a little bluer, and add a little bit of red to it to desaturate it. And if it's dark, sometimes I'll water it down so I can see the color a little better. So I like that kind of color for trees. It's not very bright, so sometimes obviously I would do it brighter than that, but I love art that is not just matching the environment too and stuff, but a lot of my work is somewhat matching the environment. So I kind of paint a little tree with, a lot of times I just like paint a line, and then it's kind of just like using the tip of my brush and doing little shapes off of it, and it kind of can just like be purposefully a little bit messy with it, and it just create a nice little evergreen tree. I feel like for me evergreens are easier to paint than deciduous trees, but I like doing both. So then what I've been doing for mixing colors for the ocean water has been using complementary colors also, but basically using blue and orange. And so I'm mixing a little bit off the page, but I'll show you guys, like I'm using a dark blue color called Payne's Gray. So it's called Payne's Gray, but it is like, it's really kind of a nice like dark blue gray, and I use it like so much. I feel like it's one of the most common colors that I use, because it just like adds a nice darkness to things without just being black. Like sometimes just black on its own is too harsh. It doesn't look as realistic. It just kind of looks more flat. So sometimes like having a bit of a color, even if you're using black in there too, can help with getting darker shades that look like have a little more, it doesn't have to be warmth, but like, yeah, I guess warmth to them. And so there's that dark blue. And then what I've been doing a lot here is mixing in an orange color that I have. This is a little bit muddied by the blue because I need to change my water, but kind of a brighter orange. And so you can see how I can make like a nice brown with that too. But so if I add some of that, those two colors that you saw together, you can see it's starting to get more of like a nice gray. And then if I feel like that's not saturated enough, I'll use more of an actual like brighter blue. So like this kind of color of blue. So I'll mix some of that into the Payne's Gray and orange combo to get a brighter color. And so this is what I would do for like the dark of like the waves in the water, or like the bottom of the water column near the seafloor where it's deeper. That's what I've been doing. Then I've just been using a lighter, brighter blue with orange for the top surface of the water. And again, like using more bright colors and things obviously can be great and beautiful. And I do that sometimes in my work, but I often don't. I often just use more earth tones. And I don't use purple and yellow as much as a combo, but it can make kind of nice gray or browns, and I kind of say it like that because I showed you guys mixing a certain blue and a certain orange, but even if you have a different orange and a different blue, it's gonna look really different. I could show that really quick. So if I mix kind of like this this blue here that is like, it's like a medium blue, and it has like a tiny bit of, just a tiny bit of a purple tone to it. Not much, but it's definitely a warmer blue. So I've that, and then this like darker orange. Before I used like a pale orange that was more yellow. So those are the two that I'm using. I'll show you guys what that looks like. And because this is a warmer blue, I feel like it's making like a nice kind of like brown gray color. Yeah, it's like so that's the kind of color, like mixing those two together, that I might do for like rocks or something, because it's like you could just mix black and white, and I definitely do sometimes, but a lot of times these kind of colors look more, yeah, like just more full and more realistic, have more depth to them, just kind of, yeah, I think they can be prettier than just mixing black and white to get a gray. And so you can really, yeah, you can use complementary colors to mix grays or browns and just kind of play around with what works. There's also a lot of really good, if you look online, like mixing gray or mixing brown or something like that, there's some really good suggestions of like specific, like mix cobalt blue with like cadmium orange or something. Like, I don't know if that's the real one, but basically like it will show you the difference of what kind of colors you can get. Yeah. So those are some of the main things that I use, and a lot of times if I'm doing something like painting a scene, I start with like figuring out my rough color palette for the painting, and I might change, of course, but basically what I'll do is like how I'm showing you guys mixing colors. I'll mix colors and write down what's in them. Like I'll be like, oh, paint's gray, and if I don't remember the name of the tube of paint, like I'll just say bright orange, I'll know what I mean. And I'll just write down kind of the formula almost of what I mixed together, because if I'm gonna be mixing a lot of it, then I'm probably gonna run out and need to mix more. And so I'll write down what's in it and kind of decide some of my palette and test it out on, you know, a separate piece of paper like this beforehand. And then I kind of make sure everything like looks good together. And I start usually not always with like the more like the background of a piece, and have it be more simple, and then add details on top. So maybe I'll show you guys that with a different piece I've been working on, and zoom out a little bit more again, but I can show more techniques if anyone has any interest in something ever. Who's here?
We had a question. Do you mainly work in watercolors, or do you like using other mediums while we're transitioning?
Yeah, good question. I feel like right now I mainly work in watercolors, but I love other mediums, and I feel like I'm actually feeling excited and ready to switch it up a little bit more again. I think have gotten really comfortable with and developing a style with watercolor. And so just feeling like as an artist, you kind of hear about like, oh, finding your voice and your style. And it's not like always some set thing, like one thing, but just kind of the ways and techniques that you do things, you figure out with each medium. And so with watercolor, I've gotten really comfortable and confident with that and how I use it. But I really love other types of painting. I love acrylic and oil both, but I think acrylic is what I'm excited about doing some more of again soon. And I think with acrylic you can get so much more depth, because you can just really get like, yeah, you can capture such great lighting with acrylic. I think people can with watercolor, but I don't think it's my strong suit to have like amazing lighting with watercolor and amazing depth. I think it can look flatter, which can be a cool effect, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. But I think with acrylic, because you can get such dark tones and because you can more easily edit and paint on top, you can also do things like washes, where you like kind of have really watered down acrylic paint and you kind of cover something to push it back or push it forward. And so that's something I really like doing with acrylic. And I also, the other medium that I would like to do more of again is printmaking. That's something I did a ton of throughout college because we had a really great printmaking studio. I went to the University of Maine in the US, and there was a new studio created my junior year, or new art building, and so the studio was incredible for printmaking and other things. And so I did a lot of like, whether it was like relief printing, which would be like carving into wood blocks or linoleum or stuff like that. There was like copper etching where you're printing metal and like basically using like kind of like acids to make cool to draw. And then screen printing, which I feel like most people know of, but maybe not know how it works as much. You can do some really cool stuff with screen printing, so that's probably what I did the most of. And I like with printmaking that with most of the techniques, if you create something, you can create like obviously like an addition or like multiples of it. And so like if you have a wood block or a screen print, you can keep like making prints and not just have the one, and they're all originals rather than just like one original. So yeah, it's something I like to do again because every medium has such so many different tools you can use with it that are really fun to take advantage of and that you can do, yeah, different styles with. So, okay, so I'm gonna kind of lift up this piece that I've been working on. And Sophia, who's with SOI, has been helping me a lot, so I really appreciate that. And she'll be back in a minute to maybe zoom in on this piece more, but it was her idea to do this live stream. And so this is the first painting that I made while on board, and so my goal with it was to show how we are taking water and sediment samples. So at the top I have the boat, the Falkor 2, and then throughout the water column I have different things. And so this little gray device is called a CTD, and it's measuring different parameters about the water. And so it's measuring temperature and salinity and fluorescence, which shows you where a lot of like the life is in the water column. And so it's taking water samples basically near the surface and then at this right near the sea floor, and so you can compare those. And it also is collecting data on the way down about the things like temperature and salinity. And so I put graph lines of that data in my piece because I really like putting graphs and data in my art. And so the light blue line here has this big spike, and then it rapidly decreases. And so that's showing fluorescence in the water column. And so the spike is showing where there's a lot of phytoplankton, which are a type of algae that live in a certain part of near the surface. And then the medium blue line that goes like this is temperature. And interestingly here it increases just a little bit with depth. And then the dark blue line is showing the salinity, which also increases with depth. And then the other details are at the bottom. I have the Sebastian, which is the ROV, or remotely operated vehicle, and so it is being piloted to the seafloor and around the seafloor by specific ROV pilots who, it's very technical, so who are trained in that, and it can often be down there for many hours. And so it basically, as I'm showing it, has like its light on and it's taking a core. So it can take sediment cores of a few different types. It can also like grab a bag of sediment, or has its kind of like, it has two basically like arms with kind of, I guess, like claws or hands that can pick stuff up. So that's how it's doing it, is grabbing the core. And then this little guy, there's a little gray line, and it's basically just another type of corn. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to work on a painting again, another painting that I'll hold it up brief for a second to show like the overall view. But this is up here is a map, a bathymetry map. So basically just like the topography of the sea floor here. And so the colors are just referring to like different heights. And I I just basically copied the colors in the real map, and so like the little bit of orange and yellow are showing where it's getting really shallow, and basically this is where the delta for Chai Ten town is, and then it gets deeper in the green and blues and into the purples. And so this is bathymetry map is data collected by our geophysics team who are doing all the mapping, and then all of these funky shapes down here are going to be showing 5 different examples of sub-bottom profiles that are within this map region. And so sub-bottom profile is just basically like a side view of what the seafloor in a specific area looks like, and the sediment structures underneath the surface. So you can go, they can basically like penetrate down with their imagery about like 30 or 40 meters below the surface of the seafloor and see what kind of stuff is under there. So again, if there's like layers of old volcanic eruptions or things like that. So I'm adding on the lines, the profile lines right now. So I'll show you guys. So like I said, I'll start with something like a background and the more kind of simple broad areas, and then I will add on detail. And so that's what I'll be working on for a little bit. I'm going to add on some of the lines of the profile. And if that wasn't clear, if you guys are interested in that, let me know on what I was talking about. I'm just going to grab some of the profile lines that I'm using to look at, because I'm basically just kind of copying how they look. And so I traced them on to get them down more quickly, but now that was just like a really faint, and so now I'm painting over them with a tiny paintbrush. So I might go back to these two, but I'm going to start on a new one to show you. So I'm going to work on this one that's a little more dramatic and fun looking here. I know this is yeah, this is what the profiles look like in just like the black color. So I'm mixing just like a really dark color to draw those profile lines. So yeah, it's been really fun to learn about all the different aspects of the research, and that's what I've been trying to convey. Like this piece is just to even show, even though I'm not adding something like so new to it, like these beautiful plots exist on their own, and so does the colorful bathymetry map, but kind of painting them all together, I'm kind of just able to show people a bunch of examples of what these look like. So, okay, so I was mixing my color, and I really like working detailed for any type of medium that I do, that I've done over time. But it is fun when you get to do like big, when I have a big area as well to paint, like big area of ocean or sky or something, because then you can be more fast. And I really like kind of blending, like some of my work is just more realistic, and then some pieces like this are a little more abstract looking, and I like doing both those styles of work, and a lot of times like blending the two styles. So it makes that fun. But I think like the overarching connection for my professional work is basically like it's all about science or the environment in different aspects. And to me, like, science has so much beauty and emotion and passion behind what goes into it and what it's telling us about our world, and so the art can like bring that forward, because it's not going to be something that's clear in a science paper, like the hard work that a scientist did, you know, to travel and do field work for months, and you know, whether they're in a tent, whether they're on board a ship, and in close quarters, whatever it is, there's a lot of passion going behind collecting that data, and a lot of emotion in terms of like something like seeing, for here, maybe getting to see the town of Triton for the first time in person after learning about it for a long time, and seeing the volcano that so disrupted life here. Or if you like work in a landscape that's really rapidly changing with climate change, kind of like doing the science that studies that is really emotional, but does, you know, not necessarily again going to be shown in like a science talk or paper. I mean, it could be, but it often isn't. And so I think the art can be really powerful in doing that. Art of all kind, like visual or spoken or written or other. And so I also just have fun because I get to make art about a lot of different topics. Learning about them at like, this one it feels like I'm learning more than this. Sometimes it's just like the superficial level or just the background for some projects. This one I feel like I'm definitely learning more than just the superficial level because I'm getting to be so immersed on board with what's going on. So it's been really cool. So there might be a lot of like gaps in my knowledge, but there's also some good depth in certain areas. And so I do a lot of paintings that are just like my own design, and like I'm choosing a topic and deciding what to make, but I also do a lot of paintings for people, like commissions or things like that, and sometimes that's for research groups, and so that's really neat because then they can be telling me about their work, and I get to make art about it and learn about it, and how to, kind of think about it, what I'm coming up with an idea of, like how to tell the story. And so that's why I'm doing this mapping piece right now, is like, these maps are really beautiful, and so even just kind of painting them, copying them, I'm able to share them with more people, kind of with the audience that I can get through my art, and share how beautiful they are on their own and how beautiful this type of science can be. It's also been fun being in this environment because I'm not usually able to just kind of focus in on projects like this. I usually have, like, as we all do, like, so many things going on in life, and so kind of jumping around between work projects, personal stuff, and on here we all work every day of the week, and so sometimes it'd be nice to have a mental break for like our ideas. Like, it's also, I don't want to, because I want to take advantage of being here, and it kind of forces you to figure out like good, forces you to learn more and figure out good ways to tell stories about it with my art. So it's been a fun opportunity, amazing opportunity. And right now, so I've shown you guys 3 of my paintings, and there's one other one I'm working on that is kind of just showing different sediment cores that have been collected, and what we're finding in them. So like if there's gray volcanic ash, if it's just muddy, if there's shells, if there's rocks, things like that. I'm just showing how they can look really different, and how we're using basically just a little bit of sediment to tell us all of this stuff about the past. Is really cool. And so that's kind of all I have planned right now, is the, this painting, the one of the town that I showed you, the boat painting, and then that core one, those 4. So I haven't decided yet if I'm going to make any more beyond this, now or in the future, but I can think about that. I think there's all more I would like to show, but it's more of just, I'll see, because once it, with anything, when you're really focused on it, sometimes when you step away, it's harder to be in that space again. And I have other projects I'll have to work on when I get home. That's why I said it's really fun to take advantage of being in this environment. Like, I haven't been good at keeping up to date with my email or anything like that, but it's like when there's those few times in life where you cannot do that stuff, it's nice. So it's just like a month off from it. It's really nice. So just check it occasionally. But yeah, we also, I think, only have like 4 days left of like our 3-week trip. So it's probably good timing wise anyway to kind of just be trying to wrap up the stuff that I'm working on. And today is nice and calm, but the last few days have been kind of off and on. We've had some good swell, and so whether like that can be tough for working and for painting, whether that's just like the chair I'm in like swivels and I can't stop it, and so that's kind of hard when it's wavy with painting. And then also just like the movement of the boat, whether it makes you not feel well or if it's just like because you're moving and trying to paint, which is like just part of the experience. So it's, you know, can be funny some of the time, but anyway, it's supposed to get rough again, and so it's good to like, I'm gonna try to paint a lot today because I don't know if it's too rough, then it would be hard to paint and not not mess it up. But I have still, for the most part, been able to paint the days it has been, and just have to take like a few more breaks. And in terms of like how we'll use these paintings after, I think some of that is just like, I find with art is like you don't always know, like you make like I have certain plans, but a lot of times you kind of like how things all get kind of like shown and distributed is sometimes you just kind of try things and see what works. And so one plan I have is I will definitely be giving at least one piece of art to Schmidt Ocean Institute, which is a requirement as part of this residency to give one, which is really standard of residencies, to have something that they can show of what the artist made about the work. And then I'm going to try to give the painting that has the cultural aspects in it and the landscape to a little museum that's in the town of Triton, which would be really neat, but of course that is just up to folks at the museum if they want to show it. And if, you know, even if it's about their town, it's totally up to them, and if they feel like it has a place, because I'm not, I'm an outsider to the region, and so we'll just see if that works out. And then I'm sure, depending on what I have, what I am left with like physically in terms of the art will determine if I would show it at a gallery or not. But if I have some of it at the end, I will. And I will definitely be showing it online. And so when I have it online, I'll always, or in person, I'll always have like descriptions so people can learn more about the topic that I'm depicting, because I want that to always be an option for these pieces. A lot of the details it'd be hard to know like what they mean without reading more, and so people could just look at it and think it's neat and be like, oh, I think that's this, and walk on, and that's fine. But if they want to learn more, then I'll say like, here's the data, or here's the topic, and if it's online, I'll have like a link to this project or something, really like kind of cite it and things like that. So I think that's important to like provide info and opportunities to learn more for those who want to. But yeah, and then the other things I plan to do with the work are, one, to make it accessible to the research team on the crew, like just anyone who's on this expedition right now. And so if I send a digital image, some people can get it printed. I can't print them all myself because that would be very expensive, but I can provide the image and tell people how to do so. And then my plan right now is to use my own funds to make prints to send to the schools that visit. From Chi-10, we had 16 schools visit us on board the ship last week, which was really awesome. And so I thought it would be, there's different things a bunch of people are doing that are awesome to kind of follow up on that in terms of like they visited and now like what can they get from that. You know, it was an awesome opportunity, but there can be more like follow up too. And so a lot of people are planning follow up things. And so for me, I was thinking of sending a print of that landscape, cultural, scientific kind of mixed piece to schools. I thought that would be the best one to send, and they could each have a copy of that. So I have to figure out like distributing that with the teacher who's here, Danny, but I'm excited for that potential. I'm not worrying about the profile being exact. I'm just trying to show the gist of like the shapes and patterns that are in there. I'm not worrying about like the number of lines or something like that. As long as it captures like the main landforms and layers. Right now, where I'm based at home, I just moved, and so I just have a little studio space set up in my home. And that's what I've done. That's what I did before this too. I had like an office studio space in my apartment, but in the past, and what I hope to do again now that I've moved somewhere with some more of an art scene, is to rent a studio space in like basically they have like like art collectives or basically buildings where there's a bunch of different studios where you can rent a space and have your own permanent like workspace that you rent. And so besides having like a nice working space outside the home, it's good for space because it's hard to have all my art stuff at home, like so much paper, all my prints for my shop, frames, paints, like just so much stuff. And I want it to like be safe and not damaged. So storing that is really hard at home, but also, and so it's nice for a studio, but also like just on having a community, because I just run a small art business, and so it's like, you know, I collaborate with people a lot, but like day to day I'm mainly just doing my own thing, and that can be hard to find like community that you would often find through a workplace. And so yeah, getting to rent a space with other artists or business owners, I found doing that in the past was really, as long as, you know, the tough part is like affordability, but if it's an option, if there's places that are affordable, I think it's so much nicer, in my opinion, for me at least, and to have that community space. So I'll keep working on this piece today and just doing these little lines that there are things in art for me that can get tedious, but a lot of times I like detail, and like there's certain areas, types of things I don't have patience for, but I feel like for art I do have patience. Like I don't have patience to write and journal, I never have, but I can spend a long time making art. And then the other thing, I'll go back to working on that landscape and working on that delta. I just find it harder to paint live because I'm a little worried about overdoing it. Yeah.
We can end in like 15 minutes. I want us to have enough time for lunch, so.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
I'll get my keyboard.
for all of these pieces, what I primarily do is to come up with ideas is after kind of learning about them, I sketch basically like lots of different thumbnails, and that's something I learned whether it was like growing up in school or when I went to college, kind of doing thumbnails, and the process part before you start a final piece is really important. Obviously there's so many types of art where that's maybe not true, that's not part of an artist's process, but I think it's like a general practice and general advice. It's really helpful to just give yourself like the creative time to think of ideas if it's something like kind of a planned style of work like mine. And so the sketching part just allows me to think of ideas, and when I work with students I kind of tell them it's kind of like the first draft of like their paper where maybe it's not as strong, and then you like get warmed up, your brain gets warmed up, and you think of like better ideas of how to put something and write something. And I think that's very true for art, and I think that would be true for most people who tried to create an art piece, no matter like their skill with art, is like they would think of a better idea of how to show something if they kind of gave some time and let their creativity warm up. So that's something for these projects I have done a lot of, is like little sketches, brainstorming ideas, and then sometimes like writing too, of like, okay, like I like how this looks, but what story does it tell? Is it something that is actually like interesting or helpful? And sometimes like it doesn't always have to be the perfect thing, but and on here on board I've been wanting to like, there's a lot of ideas I've had and things I've wanted to create, so sometimes I've been faster than I'm at home for sure, and just like kind of like just going for it, which sometimes then there's things I'm not happy with how they turn out, but at the same time sometimes it's good to just try things and see what happens. So it's kind of a mix of like planning and just obviously just trying things and letting some organic things happen with them.
But I think you just have to, I think the only way to really understand the process.
I think my favorite things to paint are probably like different types of things. Like I really like painting mountains of different shapes and colors. I like trying to get like the kind of topography in mountains. I also really like painting fish. I think it's because they're like easier to paint than most animals. Like their shape isn't so kind of rigid, where other animals, if you kind of get their form wrong, it can look awkward. Same with people. I do like painting people, but it's harder for me not to just work from an image. So a lot of times when I'm painting people, what I do is either myself or have like a friend kind of pose and I'll take photos, and so it's like, okay, I can get their form and I can edit it a little, but like basically if they're walking, if they're running, or whatever it is, like it looks better for me to kind of go off their form and draw from that. So same with like, and for that at least I can get like, it's my own image. I'm not just copying a photo of someone from online, because that's something I'm very conscientious of my work. Like obviously for data like this, I'm literally copying it, and that's part of the point and showing the real data. But if it's something like that's just someone's info or photos or imagery that's out there in the world, like I can't just copy that and don't want to. And so if it's something like I'm painting fish, for example, I'm going like, and say it's salmon, I'm gonna find like tons of images online and save them. I basically create like a presentation. So like I have a Mac, so I use Keynote, but same with PowerPoint, like basically make like a PowerPoint for each art project that I do. And so I'll save like photos to different slides, and that's my like most of my reference images throughout the project. And so I have one of those for each project that I make. And so then if it's like salmon and I'm wanting to make like not copy a photo but still make it look good, if I have like 20 images of them, I can kind of like make like combine all those different images and poke bits and pieces from each to make my own image. It's not copying someone's work. So so for in talking about people like modeling, if I'm including figures in my art, I did have two of the science research team model quickly for me for my painting showing the cultural figures. So for the volcano god Peon, I had Ivan, who's a volcanologist, pose, and then for Pinkoya, the water spirit woman, I had Maka, a geologist, pose. And so that was really kind of funny but helpful to have them do that for me, so I could paint those forms better. These vertical lines I'm trying to show, they may not be, but anyway, I'm just trying to show like some of the data of the profiles is really precise, and then some of it is kind of more like kind of more fuzzy because it's not basically getting as clear of a signal. Like profiles are created by the geophysics team, and so geophysics is basically like to do with sound waves going down and the sound reflecting off of different surfaces with different densities. And so like softer sediment versus harder sediment, for example. And so really soft sediment isn't going to have as good of a sound wave return, and it's going to look more fuzzy, but you can still get some structures in it, versus like more distinct layers. You're going to get more of a more clear line from a more clear sound wave. So this is for the sea surface, but you can do this on land. You can do this on glaciers to see how thick ice is. There's a lot of different ways this is used. People use it to find shipwrecks. Like there's lots of different cool techniques. I'm sure there's many that I don't know about. But yeah, you're just able to like figure out what's there, what's underneath the surface that you can't see. And it can be on different scales. I know it depends on I forget what the terminology is, but basically it depends, like you can have different sound waves of like different amounts basically that kind of give you like big picture versus detail and things like that. But that's kind of where I don't know the details of that very well.
Jill, you have about 5 to 10 more minutes.
Okay.
Unless you want to go more.
No, that sounds great.
Did you know that we've been streaming for over an hour now?
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Yeah.
Nice.
You're on a roll.
Wow. Lots to share. Yeah, like I said, if you guys have been around, it's been really fun to have this opportunity of being on board the ship, getting to create art about the research going on, getting to learn about the research and help with it. It's been really amazing. I always feel like getting to do things that are really like new in different ways are obviously like challenging, but in ways that are like a good challenging, like ways that help you grow and learn. And I feel like this experience for me was one of those, because I haven't done much offshore stuff more than like, you know, going out somewhere for a day. Have been on a research vessel before, seen the specific type of research, and so at first I was loving it, but it's just like a lot of learning and new stuff, and obviously there's still so much I don't know, but it's been really fun to be immersed in that for a few weeks, and with people with the crew who does that, who does this work like you know, all year round, and has been doing it for a long time, and all their stories and history with that. So I'm excited to learn more and look back at some of the other research that's happened on board, and some of the video content that's on the YouTube from it will be fun to see. Because a lot of times, like I'm interested in stuff like this, but I didn't know about tuning in. So we found on future missions to be the person tuning into the live stream and see what's going on. I'll have to stay tuned to do that. And when I do get home from this, I've a number of different projects going on, but the main thing that I'm working towards and really excited about is I'm planning an art exhibition that's going to be in Seattle, Washington, in April, this coming April 2025. And so I've been a part of a lot of exhibitions, but this is the first one that I'm kind of like, I am the lead on. And so by that I mean like I was the one who came up with the idea for the show. I put together the group of artists who are going to be involved, like the theme for the show, which is around glaciers, and have kind of designed things and led things. And the hardest part was just finding a venue, because a lot of times the way the art world works is there's galleries. Like you can pitch galleries as an artist, but it can be really tricky. And it's tricky to pitch group art shows, because a lot of times they're the ones curating who is in a show and what's being shown. And so for me to go to try to contact places and say like, here, I have all these artists and this idea, they're like, that's not really how we work. And so it took me a while. I basically just had to email pitch a bunch of different places that I found in my region until I found something that was excited about it, and that eventually happened. So I had a big list. I didn't even go through all the places on my list, but I forget how many, if I pitched like 30 places or what, I don't know, but it was like a ton of work. It took me many months, because it's like you would try to curate like each pitch. Obviously I had like a kind of a base, like basically PDF that I was sending, but the email itself, like I wanted to curate a little bit to each place to like be genuine and like, hey, I'd be excited to show in your space for these reasons. And so that just took a little bit of work, finding places and then coming up with those emails. So but anyway, the show is going to be all of April in Seattle, near the downtown area, and the whole focus of the show is around glaciers. And so all the artists involved are people who have worked on or like play on like recreationally like glaciers, and those types of landscapes like mean a lot to them. And so we'll all have different stories to tell, and that's from some different places in the world, glaciers around the world, and a lot of the artists I know personally from working on glaciers in Washington State with them. And I also want to share stories about how glaciers are really about how important they are. So not just kind of like the fact that they're melting, but also like how they're necessary for drinking water, for hydropower, for fisheries, so for communities, then how they're important culturally. So kind of from the mountains to the river systems, to the forests, to the reservoirs, to the sea, there's all these different stories about how important glaciers are in a lot of places in the world. Like where I live, a lot of the energy from the state comes from hydropower, and people, there's now concerns about how hydropower is going to be affected by the retreat of the glaciers, because they supply a lot of the water. So I also want some of those stories to be like positive things too. I don't want it to just all be like overwhelming things. I think that's important in making art about the environment, is the kind of message you're putting out in the world really matters. And I think there's already enough like overwhelming material, and that's what's shared more in something like the news. And so having stories that kind of are more about like educating people, and then stories that kind of show them like what action is possible. Like maybe there's not like this one action you can take to help a glacier, but it's like obviously not quite that simple, but just kind of showing them what's happening like local to their community, for example, that they can get involved with, I think is really helpful. And I think even just that educational piece is really important, because that piece is going to be reflected in a lot of actions in people's lives. So yeah, so I'm really excited for that show and for all the different artists involved to make some really inspiring work. So if that's something someone's interested in learning more about, I'll have updates through my website and through my social media. So like Instagram especially, I would have the most updates, and both of those things are through my name, Jill Pelto, Pelto. So I'm going to be doing a lot more planning for that when I get home from this trip and making some new work for it. I have some existing work that I can show, but I also really want to make some new pieces that are inspired by glacier work I was doing that I was doing in August, that I do every August, so right before coming here. But yeah, I love getting to do this career and making science art. It's been really hard to figure out how to do it full time and run a business with it, but I wouldn't be doing it if I wasn't really passionate about it. And kind of, I think it's important if you're doing something hard like on your own to have belief in yourself. And so I definitely believe that it's going to be like a successful path for me, and regardless of, I guess, like the financial part too, it's definitely a successful path for me in terms of like doing what I'm passionate about and makes me happy. And it's really one of my favorite things is getting to do outreach with my art, and so like working with, whether it's working with schools, which I do a lot of, or doing things with communities, like sometimes at art shows I'll have activities and stuff that makes it more engaging for people to be learning rather than just kind of coming into an art space and then leaving it, which is fine, but just like there's other things you can do sometimes too to help people enjoy coming into art spaces, because science for some people is intimidating, but art can be too for people. So what are ways you can make things more accessible? And there's never going to be like one way to reach everyone. That's not the goal. We just need a lot of different ways that get different people interested in different things. So this one is one of the trickier ones. There's just like more patterns going onto it, but I'm going to try to do a lot more on this piece today and work again on the other landscape piece. Since it might get rougher tomorrow, I want to try to make some good progress. And right now we're actually we were out more in the open ocean yesterday off the continental shelf, and there was a really deep, the ROV went really deep to about 3,500 meters, whereas most of our dives have been more like 250, sometimes some shallower, some deeper meters, and so we're going back into kind of the shallower gulfs that we were in before again now to kind of fill in some gaps. And because it's going to get stormy, so we didn't want to be out where we were for when it really hit. But it's been fun as a result because we've been able to see land for a bit of it, rather than just being out in the ocean without views, which will be, totally fine. But it's been fun to see, as a result, some of the beautiful landscape here. There's a lot of volcanoes and mountains. It's been really cloudy, so we haven't ever gotten like just a full open view of everything. But it's still been really, really beautiful. So I don't know if it'll be fun if we get more glimpses later today of mountains. Yeah. And we've seen a little bit of wildlife. It's hard to like always kind of, sounds fun just to sit and watch for a while, but a lot of times I want to people are busy, and so I want to be making art, so I haven't done that as much as I sometimes might, but including like I like going sitting outside and making art, but I haven't done that too much because one, there's not always views. It's also been a little bit rainy, so there's only so many places you can sit outside. There are some covered areas, but anyway, there has been Like yesterday there was a ton of albatross and other seabirds out, which was really cool. There was some different types of seals. Some people saw whales a couple days ago. I did not see them. And then when we were closer on shore, there was some penguins. I only saw them when they were really far away. They're, I think, Magellanic penguins. What?
Humboldt penguins.
Humboldt penguins? Okay, I did not know what type. So I could tell from their swimming behavior and then like zooming way onto my camera. It was not a good pic, but you could tell it was them. And then I think someone saw one dolphin. But it hasn't been, I think there's like a ton of life here, but I think this is like not the time of year for it, was my impression.
Yeah, that's the impression I got too.
Yeah.
But I don't know much
Yeah,
about
because I've heard there was like every type of whale here coming through this quarter, but I'm sure it's like just active certain times, and right now it's like the end of winter here, so it's probably not that time. But yeah, still excited for whatever we've seen. Yeah.
All right, it is 12:15.
All right.
We wrap up soon.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Maybe ask for any last-minute comments or questions, and then we can wrap it up.
We're gonna wrap it up, the stream, in just a few minutes, and if anyone has any comments or questions to ask before we go, feel free to ask. And then if you ever ask me questions on like my Instagram or anything too, I respond to everything there. But it's been fun doing this and getting to explain what I'm working on and share some more details with people. So thank you for anyone who joined. Really appreciate you coming in. And I'll be sharing images of these works online on my website and Instagram, for example, kind of as I finish them in the next weeks. Or maybe I'll finish them all before I leave.
Just gonna check. I don't think we had any new questions come in. I've just been peppering them throughout.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Alright, I'll switch it back to the camera view with you in it if you want to say bye.
Yeah.
And maybe show, hold up.
Yeah.
Done. Just make the angle a little bit better.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, so much for tuning in and watching. This is really fun to get to do, and let me know if you have any questions in the future. I have been working on painting these sub-bottom profiles, and so I was working on just some fine detailed lines of this profile. There's going to be 5 different ones, so it's just all different parts of the sea floor, what it looks like. And so that's what I've been slowly painting during the last chunk of time. And so that's what I'm going to keep doing and fill out the rest of them and complete this piece.
Cool.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.